The video you're about to watch is from the Brand Podcast Summit, brought to you by Lower Street. We're a podcast agency for brands. This was a 2-day event that brought together some massive companies like the New York Times, LA Times, Morgan Stanley, Atlassian, REI, YouTube, Spotify, a ton of companies, all gathered to talk about what has worked for them in podcasting and not worked for them over the last 12 months. And looking forward, what are they planning and looking at over the next 12 months? So if you're a marketer looking at podcasting this year, or you have a podcast and you're looking to improve on it or get more out of it, I think you're going to find a ton of value here. And so for more videos just like this one, head over to lowerstreet.co/events. And you'll also find information there about future conferences and summits we have coming up. So head over to lowerstreet.co/events.
The Brand Podcast Summit.
I'm very excited to be welcoming our next speaker. Our speaker is Jay Acunzo, and Jay helps experts become stronger storytelling. His driving belief is that you should care more about resonance than reach to grow your business. After working in marketing roles for companies like Google and HubSpot, Jay now consults clients on their public speaking and their most important storytelling projects, including podcasts. He's hosted shows since 2015 and interviewed more than 800 guests in that time, and he's helped develop original series for brands like MailChimp, Salesforce, GoDaddy, and Wistia. Jay wrote this intro, if you can't tell, and he says when he was little, a family friend asked him to appear in the pilot episode of their cooking show. According to the chef, Jay is always the biggest goof in the room. He likes to think he's grown up, but you be the judge. Please take it away, Jay.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone being here today. There's a lot of scary things about doing these events. It's scary for, the team behind the event. So kudos to Lower Street for pulling something so great off. I'm seeing the chatter. I'm watching on LinkedIn. Like, it's scary to do these things, and they're doing such a great job. It's scary for me to hit this button right here. I'm going to hit this button to share my screen. That's always scary in events like this. And it looks like it's working well. It's also really scary, though, to face the truth as podcasters, as marketers, as brand and audience builders today. It's really scary to face the truth, specifically this truth, which is the behavior of people who listen weekly to podcasts. Among listeners who say they listen every week, 77% listen to fewer than 10 hours, and 59%, so still the majority, listen to fewer than 5. So that's the list. That's the space that we are competing for. Yes, against industry competitors and shows with similar topics to ours, but also against all shows. Can you get on this really narrow list of shows? What makes them pick you and stick with you against the odds? Because the odds are against that happening. Some of you might remember this scene from the movie Aladdin, where the genie is explaining his conundrum. Phenomenal cosmic powers, itty bitty living space. Well, that's what it's like to be a podcaster, I think. We all feel our shows bring phenomenal cosmic powers, or should anyway. And yet we have to cram this amazing thing we labor over into a small sliver of their day, of their lives, of their work. I host a podcast called How Stories Happen. My job is to help business leaders be better storytellers and speakers. I think the show has phenomenal cosmic powers. You can hear people like Seth Godin and Ann Handley dissect one story they created piece by piece. I think that has real power for us as communicators. But I have to fit that show into a really short list of shows that my audience will enroll into their lives, and a really narrow band of time that they will invest listening all week long. Or so says the data. So what causes others to actually add your show to their short list? And it is such a short list. Why would they pick you and stick with you against the odds? Well, I think as marketers, we believe the same things, generally speaking. We think we got to feel like this to people. We got to have phenomenal cosmic power. We got to be the biggest and best, the number one in our space. And then people will enroll us into their lives to listen, watch, or both. But I actually think we don't need to be big. We don't need to be like this to get picked. We need something else. And to illuminate that something else, I have another Disney-related slide for you that features kind of an odd question. It's a silly question, I'll admit, but I think it's a revealing one. So just sort of go with me for a moment here, okay? So this silly question is, what's the best Disney film of all time? I actually would love if you could answer that in the chat. Here, I'll go ahead and find the chat. Another scary thing as I fumble through Zoom here. What do you think is the best Disney film of all time? Okay, Pierce is saying Moana. Sean is saying Cinderella. Off to a good start, I would say. You're throwing haymakers out of the gate. The Lion King, Moana, Snow White, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, Aladdin. Yeah, reference in the talk. I love it. We're part of this together. Mulan, Robin Hood. Ooh, callback. I like it. Emperor's New Groove, deep cut. Deep cut. Aladdin again. Well, I really appreciate the participation. Unfortunately, you're all wrong. There is one objectively correct answer to the question, and it's a Goofy movie. If you know, you know, right? It's because of Powerline, the pop star in the film. Yeah, the songs he sings are legit good songs. I'm still waiting on the album. Now, I said before, and I'll say it again, this is a ridiculous question to be asking, but it's ridiculous for a very specific reason. You can't answer it. Not really. There is no correct or objectively right answer to this question. But we spend so much time in our work as marketers trying to project to others, look, we're the best. We're the number one in the category. We're objectively or academically sound, the right pick for others, when that's not how others make choices about anything. We are not rational creatures. We're subjective first, emotional beings who then rationalize what we did later. Something revealing happened when I asked you this question. You didn't answer it. I said, what's the best Disney film? But how did you hear it? How did you respond to it? You thought I said this. What's my favorite Disney film? That is how we actually make choices. So in this world where you're up against the biggest and the best, good news. You don't need to be the biggest or the best. You need to be their favorite, their personal preferred pick for a specific purpose. This is not a question of resources or awareness. Think of your favorite things that you enroll and keep in your lives. Your favorite team or sport, food or restaurant, your favorite city or animal or pet. They're like parts of our identity. So if I say that's my favorite city or that's my favorite show, you're learning about me as much as, if not more than, those things, really. And there's nothing objective to the pick. Like my favorite shirt is not objectively the best made shirt that either exists or even that I own in my closet, but it feels irreplaceable to me. That's how we should feel to our audiences, irreplaceable no matter what else comes along. Nothing objective to it. My favorite team, the New York Knicks. If you know anything about sports, you know that for decades of my life, literally one of the worst objective picks I could have made. Terrible organization, not winning anything, making all the wrong choices, but they were my pick. They got my time, my attention, my money. Does that sound like rational decision-making to you? No, but it is human decision-making. And guess what your audience is made of? When your audience makes choices, they play favorites. The actual question we should ask, well, are you one of them? Don't be the best, whatever that means. Be their favorite. Now, most of the content, most of the marketing, most of the podcasts we create actively undermine this objective because mostly we show up sharing commodity content. That's our enemy today. I can get it anywhere, and I guess you're anywhere. And so now it feels like this endless race to nowhere. Maybe you've heard of the phrase, the marketing hamster wheel or the content hamster wheel. Maybe you've heard that phrase before. Yeah. Maybe your left eye just started to twitch a little bit. Like, I want to get off that thing. We need to stop competing on this exhausting tactic-based approach to marketing. We need to learn to compete on the impact of our ideas, not the volume of our marketing. Well, the impact of an idea is directly proportional to two different traits, its value and its originality. And we can visualize how we're doing on the idea impact matrix. Let's start with value. The least valuable content we can create is merely informational. The most valuable is insightful. So informational is like, what is AI? Insightful is why and how I should use AI in this niche, for this purpose, for this project, in this moment. Informational is the 6 fastest growing brands in your space. Here they are. Insightful is, why are they growing so quickly? Informational, the backstory and bio of my favorite storyteller and show host ever, Anthony Bourdain. Insightful, what made Bourdain such a beloved figure and powerful storyteller? Informational content is like handing someone a map of North America. Here, you have it now. It's a map of Europe. But insightful content is like handing them a compass. They can walk into any scenario, find their bearings, and figure it out from there. It's way more valuable. So I think of it like this: information updates people, insights empower them. That is the game we're in. To increase the value of your ideas, make them more insightful. Now, we can also plot our originality on a spectrum from general to personal. Could anyone in your space have said it or done it that way? Are you announcing the greatest show ever launched that rhymes with every other show launched before you? Or could it only come from you and your team's unique and personal perspective? So yeah, I can give you 6 tips for crafting a stronger podcast, but maybe in that article, I need to open dissecting my 3 favorite shows. Maybe instead of the 6 quotes from Anthony Bourdain that illuminate his power as a storyteller and how he viewed this craft, I can tell a story about when I first became disillusioned with marketing and binged his show and noticed what he was doing to me and how. And then look, this is what he validates. My assumptions were true. Here's what he says about storytelling. I didn't need to win new budget. I needed to change how I said something to have a greater impact. I think of it like this. AI is trained on internet content, but you are trained on the content of your life, and nobody else has access to that. Your personal perspective is your biggest, perhaps your only remaining advantage. Are you using it? Mostly, we're not. Mostly, we're doing things that are generic, things that are commodified. We're trapped in the commodity cage, and there we sprint on our hamster wheels, trying our darndest to make the work when it hasn't been designed that way because it's commodified. Here's a couple examples of commodity shows. These are fictional examples. I didn't want to throw anyone under the bus who's doing the hard work out there, but you might see real shows you know reflected in these examples. So you might have a commodity category show, the Music Fan Podcast. What's new and what's hot in music, plus interviews with artists, writers, and more. I can get it anywhere. I guess this is anywhere. Or how about this? The John Doe Experience, raw and unfiltered interviews with the world's most successful business builders, hosted by John, the growth guy, Doe. Couple comments, if I may, yeah? Raw and unfiltered is amateur speak for bad and unedited. If someone says my show is raw and unfiltered, run. You're going to have a bad time. The growth guy. Do you all remember the era of social media? We're kind of exiting it right now, thankfully, where people gave themselves like nicknames in their bios. The growth guy, the newsletter gal. That's like me in high school shooting a 3-point jump shot going, I'm white lightning. What? What are we doing? Well, what we're doing is we don't know how to separate. So we're like, look, we're so good in our category, even though we have no original ideas. We're so conflated with our category. We're the best. Nobody's favorite, but we're the best. People actually nickname us our topic. No, they don't, John Doe. No, they don't. How do we evolve these to separate, to stand out, to win passionate fans? Let's try real shows now. Well, the Music Fan Podcast might become Cole Kushnah's Dissect. Here's how he describes it. A serialized music show that examines a single album per season, 1 song per episode. Dissect was created to counter this cultural shift of swiping past great works because, as he asserts, great art deserves more than a swipe. Or how about in the success and inspiration space, you get 3 books from Neil Pasricha. Each chapter, those are what he calls his episodes, discusses the 3 most formative books of one of the world's most inspiring people. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, if we meet someone of rare intellect, we should ask what books they read. I believe books are the ultimate form of compressed knowledge and wisdom. So you've heard Seth Godin interviewed, you've heard Brene Brown, but not like you've heard them on this show. Because on this show, he has a distinct assertion or perspective that colors the entire program. They have what's known as a premise, and it's a bizarre missing piece, especially on around marketers, but everywhere we go, we see content that lacks a true premise. A premise is a defensible assertion that you make based on your perspective, which informs your choices, including your content and your reputation. It's the lens through which you see it. It's the big idea you explore. It's your perspective made memorable. So, for example, speeches have premises. If I were to assert to you, hey, you should care more about resonance than reach to grow your business, something I truly believe, well, then which talk should I craft? Make me care how to compete on the influence of your ideas, not the volume of your marketing. Or follower frenzy, how to predictably go viral to win the attention economy. Well, the one on the left is my signature speech, and the one on the right makes me throw up in my mouth. at least a little bit. And you might want the one on the right. You might want to give the one on the right, but based on how I see it, based on what I assert, that's not the one I'm going to give. So speeches have premises. Newsletters have premises. Laura Eastburn is a contractor who consults her clients on their paid advertising on social media. And she asserts that advertising comes with social, linguistic, and human responsibilities because marketing shapes culture. So understanding words is understanding advertising. So how does she differentiate her newsletter? She writes one word. Every edition, she helps you re-examine a word in the zeitgeist of marketing and advertising. She really believes, and she can defend the fact that knowing about authentic and how to use it and what it means is more valuable and more of a personal connection with her audience. In other words, it's higher impact material than updating you about whatever Instagram did this week on their ad tech platform. Everybody in her space can share that. Maybe she does it at the bottom of the email, but nothing you'll get in the advertising space comes from this same perspective. She's the only one that can run this newsletter. Businesses also have premises. My friend Susan Bowles asserts to the world, you should make calm your new KPI, not as a tagline, but as an actual thing you measure. As a firm that sells services and education around your business operations and finance, Susan is a CFO and COO by trade. How does she tell her story to the world given this premise? Well, she runs a podcast called Beyond Margins, where she talks about clever ways people are managing, growing, and measuring their success in business away from hyper growth at all costs. She has intensives and ongoing support modeled to help you build a calmer company. And of course, her social presence. The hidden cost of urgency in your business. A lot of people in her position would go, you need urgency, you need speed. She challenges that because urgency is the enemy of calm. Because a premise is a defensible assertion you make based on your perspective, which informs your choices and your reputation. Your premise is like a beacon you send out in this sea of sameness, and it attracts your true believers. But best of all, for our causes, you give them shared language and an emotional jolt strong enough to go out to the world too. They reflect your ideas out to others. That's such a strong sign we're resonating. Are they saying key phrases back to you or out to others that you handed them? Because you can't own your audience. I know that's advice we get, but you can't. However, I do believe you can own an idea in their minds. And you're smart enough already, you're expert enough already, but your premise might not be strong enough just yet. Your podcast needs a premise. And talking topics with experts ain't it. Even if it was successful at one point, that era is gone. So in the podcast world, if I assert something about storytelling, which show do I create? My assertion is, you don't experience stories. You're not telling your launch story for your show or your launch story for your business or a success story or a sob story. You don't experience stories. You experience moments in your life, and then you craft that material into stories. That's what I assert. So what show do I create? How stories happen, where expert and exceptional communicators dissect one story. It's not Story Stars, the long form interview with those same people. That might be a good show, but it's not how I see it, and it's not what I want to be known for. So in your show, through your premise, don't just help them, don't just spoon feed them expertise, change them, challenge them, push them towards better. Don't act like an expert, you have expertise, but act like an explorer. You say to the world, where we stand is broken or insufficient. In the distance, I see a mountain I want to get us to. Join me every edition of my show, every instance of my public persona and platform where I try to get us there. And if you disagree, that's fine, but we're going there together. And it's not how my competitors see it either. Because visionaries have a clear vision. So what's yours? Leaders lead us somewhere, away from what's broken towards better. Does your show do that too? Develop your premise. If you want your show to get picked, you need to develop something inherently pickable. If you want your show to get shared, you need to develop something shareable. Say it with me now. If you want your show to grow, well, you need to know someone at Apple, but let's see, maybe Spotify. But if you don't do that, you need to create something inherently growable. And to do that, we can try an exercise called the XY premise pitch. We'll look at the actual pitch. We'll see some examples based on different categories, and then we'll try to build a premise together to end this talk. Try the XY premise pitch. So in this model, X is your topics. It's what you explore. Y is your hook. It's how you explore it. And that is what separates you. Here's how to read the XY premise pitch. This is a show about X. Unlike other shows about X, only we Why? Man, do we miss that second part so often, huh? What's your show's premise? Because the premise provides motivation to subscribe and language to share. And I would wager the X part of this equation is pretty clear for most of us. What about the why? Because that's why I would care. Let's look at some examples. Audio, video, it doesn't matter. It applies to all shows. So on YouTube, you have Hot Ones. This is a celebrity interview show. Unlike other celebrity interview shows, only Hot Ones has its guests eat progressively hotter wings as they answer progressively tougher questions. I mentioned 3 books from Neil Pasricha. This is a show about happiness and success. Unlike other shows, and oh my gosh, how many are there? Just like with celebrity interview shows, there are a dime a dozen. So all these success shows, yeah, they interview celebrities, they interview influencers, they interview authors. Neil's guest list looks like everyone else's. But only 3 books asks its guests to explain the 3 books that most influence them to unlock their wisdom too. This is a category of hook called a gimmick. They instantly create unique experiences with common guests. Now, gimmick can be used in derogatory fashion. That's not what I mean here. I mean, it's a mechanic that changes the look or feel of the experience. It's a gimmick. The Hot Ones, the wings are a gimmick. 3 books, asking them to bring 3 books that informed their lives or influenced them is a gimmick. And then that illuminates similar guests, even similar ideas in different or even deeper ways. Song Exploder. This is a show about music. Unlike other shows about music, only Song Exploder asks musicians to take apart their songs and piece by piece tell the story of how they were made. Mike Birbiglia's Working It Out. This is a show about comedy. Unlike other shows about comedy, only Working It Out puts the process of working out new stories and jokes on display. These are very saturated spaces also, but by using a visual hook, it's something you can identify with or picture, even if it's audio, right? A visual hook is, oh, the song is exploding. We're working out new material. And in this case, both of them happen to zoom into parts of the whole experience, the whole art form, and they stay there. Well, this gives new life to popular topics, and all the advice and philosophies from the guest somehow gain new power. It's a visual hook. This is a show about comedy. Comedians in cars getting coffee. Unlike other shows about comedy, only Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee follows 2 comedians as they drive in vintage cars to get coffee while talking shop. Actors on Actors. This is a show about acting. Unlike other shows about acting, only Actors on Actors removes the journalist to feature 2 actors interviewing each other instead. And the result of these things is something I call a pattern break. You get people out of the routine. You place familiar guests talking about familiar topics in unfamiliar environments, changing their demeanor. There's a reason Actors on Actors reveals things about acting that no journalist would have unearthed. It's about the comfort. It's about the break in the pattern. They didn't expect it, so they're looser. This is really important for marketers. I interview a lot of executives, and I have to find ways to break their routine, break them from the sound bites, help them feel human, not corporate. And I have to do that by breaking patterns in the minutia. Well, these shows have taken it to the nth degree. It's their entire hook. This is a show about music called Disgraceland. Unlike other shows about music, only Disgraceland combines the thrill of true crime dramas, the ugly truth of music like the show Behind the Music, and the monologue storytelling of shows like Lore. This is my show, a show teaching storytelling. Unlike other shows teaching storytelling, only How Stories Happen combines the dissection of a single piece, like Song Exploder, the swapping of notes, like Working It Out, and the lens of building a business, because it's for business communicators. By using a mashup, we combine 2 or more dissected or disconnected things, borrowing specific elements of each to create something original. This is a show about comic book heroes. Unlike other shows about comic book heroes, only Power Levels treats film and TV footage like real evidence. This is crazy. And talks to real physicists to decide who's most powerful, Thor or Hulk. This is a show about tech trends. Unlike other shows about tech trends, only Hackable asks real hackers to teach us just how safe and secure a given technology is. For all the chatter of using ChatGPT or Claude, this show would pressure test how safe and how hackable and how, high fidelity and secure are these tools really. By using a challenge, they immediately set and raise the stakes to create an irresistible must-watch or must-listen show. They throw down the gauntlet, and even they don't know what will happen next. And the last category, This is a show about building brands. Unlike other shows about building brands, only Breaking Brand documents the story of Gin Lane. That's the agency behind all these notable brands like Warby Parker, Hims and Hers, Harry's, Sweetgreen, Bonobos, smash hit agency, right? But they rebranded to Pattern Brands, killed all their client work, and began to build their own direct-to-consumer brands, and Breaking Brand from Buffer documented that process. This is a show about employee training. Unlike other shows about employee training, only Onboarding Joey from 360 Learning, which helps with your onboarding, documents the story of a real employee experiencing the real process and pain of onboarding into a brand new job. So they use a quest, probably the hardest to pull off well. They grant unprecedented access to something tantalizing while inviting audiences on journeys to improve or to rethink important things. Let's see one in action. How do you get to something like this from where we typically begin? Again, a fake show. We're going to see real examples in our brains, in our podcast feeds that resemble shows like this. But I didn't want to critique anybody who's out there doing hard work. So this fake show is the modern marketing show. Here's where the premise begins. Interviews with marketers about their jobs and their points of view on marketing. It's talking topics with experts. And now you have to get on the hamster wheel and really try to promote the hell out of this because you're a commodity. It's not very irresistible or high impact. How do we elevate it to the top of the audience resonance pyramid? Because we all start out in the same place. Our topics make us immediately relevant. We're in the realm of possibility for others to select. But do they select us? There's a lot of competition there. So some of us become enjoyable, and that helps separate. But I also think that's table stakes today. There's so much choice, you only go with things that are enjoyable. Next, impactful. Do you actually help them, improve them, change them? Are you of use in some way? Maybe it's just helping them feel seen. Maybe it's helping them write down some steps that they go and take, or something in between. Are you actually making an impact, being memorable, not just present? And the last thing is personal. Oh my gosh, yes, that's my favorite show, and I will tell 5 friends right now. Now, you're all smart people. I just only met you recently, but I can tell you're very smart. And might I add, very attractive. Love your hair today. There's a ton of competition at the bottom. We don't want to be there. Just pick the right topic or niche. Get in line. There's a ton of options. Very few get to the top. That's what we want. Likewise, the depth of connection, very forgettable stuff is at the bottom. Very weak connection, if any. But it's very irreplaceable to ascend to the top. So we want to be there too. And right now, we're not doing so great with our fake show we're building together. Interviews with marketers about their jobs and points of view on marketing. There is a glut of competitors that sound exactly like that. These are all real shows now. Interviews with global experts together with the latest news, tools, strategies, and techniques to give your digital marketing the edge. It's the Digital Marketing Podcast. In researching for this presentation, I found 7 shows with this exact name, not even description. That would have been 700. The same name, Digital Marketing Podcast. What are we doing, folks? The B2B Growth Show, Conversations from the Frontline of Marketing, Content and Conversation. Nope, that sounds familiar. Dive into the executional nitty-gritty of what makes content rank, etc., etc. You get the picture here, and you get lost here too. Because where's our show? All right, so we're going to do something they're not. We're not just going to be relevant. We're going to be enjoyable. Well, I really love this show on YouTube. Maybe you've heard about it. It's called Hot Ones, where they ask these celebrities to eat spicy wings while they interview them. Yeah. Okay, cool. We're just going to rip that off. That is more enjoyable. I'm going to interview all these marketers about generic marketing things, the same parade of voices saying the same stuff they say everywhere else, but let's add a gimmick. Let's add the wings for reasons to be more enjoyable. So interviews with marketers about their jobs while eating progressively spicier wings. But there's plenty of shows that do a good job too. Maybe they have a gimmick or a game. Maybe they have strong segmentation or storytelling. Maybe they just have really awesome influential hosts and guests, and it's really enjoyable to listen. So we're still pretty lost. Okay. We're going to keep going. Let's keep developing the premise. It's interviews with marketers about their jobs and their points of view on marketing while eating progressively spicier hot wings. But to have a greater impact, we'll also elevate the questions because the questions will get increasingly difficult or more important or more in-depth. Great. This alone would be an exceptional show compared to most shows about marketing. But there are some competitors there, and there is still a ceiling we've put on ourselves. Like, how do we elevate to be someone's favorite? Well, we have to look inward and less at the competition. You know, it's me. Hi, I'm the Podlum. It's me. You were so nice to hang out with me today, and I just let you down so hard with that awful Taylor Swift joke. I am so sorry. Please see Lower Street for a full refund. No, I'm just kidding. I think this was free. So, anyways, you're stuck with me. How do we become personal in how we feel to others so they pick us, stick with us, and refer us against the odds? Well, we have to act like an explorer. Why are we doing this? Where is this leading? What change are we disseminating in this world? So yeah, each question gets increasingly difficult, but maybe we have a belief, we have a premise, we have an assertion from our perspective, and it sounds like this. We believe that marketers today need to master the skill of adapting to constantly increasing pressure. That's the number one skill. Yeah, you got to know branding and marketing and tech and SEO and blah, blah, blah. But actually, the premium skill is, can you adapt? And so we believe that. And so on our show, we increase the pressure on our guests. Now it makes sense. Why the wings? It's a missed opportunity to say something that matters, to own an idea in their minds until we reach this point where suddenly this gimmick is not a stunt to stand out. It's actually part of our message. It's actually a reason they would care about us because it's actually a premise. The XY premise pitch holds up here. This is a show about modern marketing. Unlike other shows about modern marketing, only we focus on how marketers can thrive while facing ever-increasing pressures. So we increase the pressure on our guests. Yeah, good news. You're going to eat progressively hotter wings while the questions get progressively harder. Now it all makes sense. And if you're feeling fancy, stick the landing, go ahead. You have that premise. You're feeling good, feeling fancy. It's the Modern Marketing Show. The only thing today's top marketers have in common is the ability to adapt. Thank you. All the 5-star ratings, all the monies, all the word of mouth growth. You have someone's favorite show. Before I go, I want to thank Lower Street for having me. Thank you for your attention. This has been a wonderful event. We're going to have some Q&A time in just a bit. I want to invite you to something that is literally launching in a week or two. I'm so excited. It took me all year to make this. It is How Stories happened. We don't get access to people's really messy process of developing premium projects. We just assume they pooped gold. That's not how it happens. So whether you're interested in premise development, the piloting process, how to format an episode rundown, how to create someone's favorite show, I'm launching a behind the scenes series with me developing all these parts and pieces and also being goofy on camera. So you can go to that URL or take a screenshot or a picture of that QR code and get a sneak preview right now. And episode 1 launches very, very soon. It's a 4-part educational and very silly limited series. Remember, you're not just an expert, you're an explorer. Don't explore topics. That's a dime a dozen. You're a commodity. Explore a premise, a defensible assertion about your space, pulled from your perspective, informing your choices and your reputation. Because what you know does matter, but what you say and how you say it determines whether or not they care. No more commodity content, no more marketing hamster wheel. Make something that makes me care. You can't own your audience, but you can own an idea in their minds. And what idea would you like to own? That's the purpose of your show. Don't market more, matter more. Because when you matter more, you have to hustle and hype less. Don't be the best, be their favorite. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the emojis. Thank you for being one of my favorite audiences. And now we have some time for Q&A.
Hello. I popped in
Hello.
too quickly. I'm back now. This was amazing, Jay. Thank you so much. You really did. You lived up to your own hype.
Thank you. My own hype.
Yeah, this is fantastic. No, I mean, that's tough. Not everybody does. So I'm gonna jump in with some questions now. I guess to start, I'd love to hear for a brand who's already launched a podcast that maybe, is a podcast that's talking to experts about topics. It doesn't really have a premise. How would you recommend they go about developing that show that they already have into something that has more of a premise? Have you seen examples of this as well?
Yeah, completely. I think we have all these advantages we ignore even when we're in motion running a show because we're speaking directly to our audience, which is such a connection. So you're able to say in very honest fashion, hey, you know what we've picked up on in talking to our guests and you, the listener, is this is a big problem right now, or this is a big idea no one's talking about, or we really can't stand this problem. Or look, if you research all our guests and the episodes we've published, there's this through line we're not exploring deeply enough. You can be directly honest with them. There's nothing worse than the sunk cost fallacy for podcasters where you've been doing it a certain way. So you got to just make it work because that's how you've been doing it, or you got to continue it because you started it. That's silly. Why? What you did before has no bearing on what you do next. And so one is your advantage is because of the format of audio, video, or both, you can be more honest and direct with your audience. So that's one advantage is if you're going to make a change, talk your audience through it because it's about serving them better. The second thing though, and this is so silly with a lot of brand shows, every other type of show, including podcasts, by the way, built by media and entertainment experts and companies and personalities, they understand the value of a pilot. And we don't. I also don't think we know what a pilot really means. The pilot is not just like episode 1 to test if it was like going to hit with the audience. You're also working out your own internal kinks too. And you're piloting the premise. Do people care about this idea? Do we articulate the idea the way they need to hear it? That's also a layer of this. You're piloting the format. Like, how do we move people through this and explore the premise with a guest or without? How do we get them to the end? And you're also piloting the role of the talent. Do we have the right host? Or if you're the host, am I good at this or do I want to do this? Or is this bringing out the best in me? Or am I just a cog type of host that could be swapped out at a moment's notice? And it's going to be harder to earn trust with an audience as a result because the trust flows to the voice, right? So there's all these elements to pilot. And if you're already running a show, you go outside the show and you start publishing opinion pieces about your premise to see if it connects. You start talking to your audience to see what they say or if they light up the way you explain that. And then you have some data, if qualitative, away from the show in lower stakes types of content and conversation that then you can go back to the programming of the show and go, all right, we got to change, wholesale, big change right away. Or if that's scary, launch a mini series. For the next 5 episodes, we're going to explore this. Or bonus episodes. Every other week we've added. And every other week we're going to do this. And then eventually you have the confidence and the credibility and the traction to make it the whole dang show. So take heart that there's any number of ways and advantages that you have at your disposal to go from a show that's generic and sort of like lilting along to that same show being far better. You will have to change something, but it doesn't have to feel like a leap.
Yeah. You sort of touched on one of my next questions, which was, is there a way to pressure test your concepts when you are, when you're going to launch a new show?
Yeah, totally.
I'm
All
curious,
you're looking for is a small number
no,
of people
please.
reacting in big ways. That's the signal. Small numbers reacting in big ways. That's the sign you should keep investing in that idea.
I love that. That's super helpful. There is a question in the chat that's asking about they have a podcast. It's about a pretty sensitive topic. It's about like a pretty serious subject matter.
Sure.
You talked a little bit about how taking, some of the concepts that you have that could make the show entertaining might also come off as gimmicky and how you can like
Yes.
avoid being gimmicky.
Yeah.
How can we take, something that's maybe a more serious subject matter, a more sensitive topic,
Right.
and inject that, creativity, that entertainment factor, and make it somebody's favorite without it coming across as insensitive or as too gimmicky?
2 shows I'll point you to as examples, and then I'll see if we can analyze it really, really quickly in more plain language. But the examples are How to Talk to Mommy and Poppy About Anything. This is a show about the lives and realities of immigrants, unlike other shows about that same idea. Only this show, How to Talk to Mommy and Poppy About Anything, is about how children of immigrant parents can talk about the hardest stuff, the most sensitive stuff with their parents. So that's one way to do it. And their specific execution, if I can recall, is they actually do talk to a psychologist or the right type of expert voice, the individual adult child, and then I think sometimes the parent too. Another show that I've recently picked up on from the UK is, oh my gosh, I'm going to butcher the name. Let me get it right. Strangers on a Bench. It's
Oh, I love that
cozy,
show.
so cozy. It's the anti like flashy names and talking microphones and all that stuff. Strangers on a Bench. That's a gimmick, right? Instead of talking to you over here or maybe a pattern break even, I'm going to talk to you about while sitting on a bench. So I think what a sensitive subject allows you to do more easily than a common, very flat subject, like, I don't know, marketing, how to do marketing, is it allows you to speak the unspoken in a calm, careful way, right? You're like, listen, this is hard. Here's the vehicle that we've built to make it less hard. Or listen, we're not speaking this confidently. Here's the place we can practice that. Like, it's such a wonderful oasis that you can provide and not have to do like, and we're adding hot ones, let's go. Like, that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's perfect. I have one last question for you that's in the chat from Ren, who says, can you share who you have been most influenced by?
I mentioned them already. Bourdain, Birbiglia, Jad Abumrad. I like look at these people and I'm the weirdo. Let me rephrase that. I'm the idiot who goes, I'm going to make stuff like that. I think it's a lot of creatives. A lot of creatives are those freaks. Instead of going, that's amazing, I could never, we go, that's amazing, I'm going to do that. And then you realize how hard it is and what you need to learn. And then, the journey begins for you. So I love a storyteller capable of putting you right on the edge of sentimentality without being too sentimental. Like the Bill Lawrence approach with Scrubs and Shrinking and Ted Lasso of like, make me laugh, break my heart, make me laugh, break my heart. And I want to bring more of that stuff into the business world, frankly, where there's more meaning to be had than we recognize and certainly than we reflect through our content. And I think a lot of that happens like with my current show. I call it the feel of the flower. When you're really in the weeds with somebody talking about something they made. I mean, Seth Godin gets asked for his advice all the time. To see him light up when I asked him to break down the minutia of a story he told, you just get this whole other element from him and a level of appreciation too.
The Brand Podcast Summit.